Hey guys, welcome back to the Unprofessional Kitchen where I show you how to make great food in the average kitchen. Today, we're going to be making pasta from scratch and I'm going to be showing you step by step how to get it done. Admittedly, this is not something you're going to be cooking on a weekday, but if you want to explore the quality difference between dried pasta and fresh pasta, this is a great thing to cook on the weekend. So, without further ado, let's get started. As always, we're going to start with the list of ingredients, starting with arguably the most important, flour. For this recipe, if all you can get your hands on is all-purpose flour, that's just fine, it'll work fantastically. However, if you can manage to get a hold of 00 flour, I'd recommend that. It's milled to a much finer consistency, which results in a much smoother pasta, and we're going to use about 2 cups of it. Following up with that, we're going to use 4 large whole eggs and 4 large egg yolks. I'm also going to add 1 teaspoon of extra virgin olive oil and a pinch of salt that we're going to use in the cooking water at the end. We'll begin first by adding the egg ingredients together in a mixing bowl, starting first with the whole eggs. Top tip, make sure the eggs are at room temperature when you're ready to use them. Cold eggs result in a very hard and tough dough that's difficult to knead, so having the eggs at room temperature will make it a lot easier to work with and more malleable. We start separating the yolks from the remaining 4, and contrary to what I'm demonstrating, it is in fact easier if you don't break all the yolks as you add them in. Because I broke 2 of the yolks during this step, I'm going to add a 5th yolk to help compensate for that. Once that's done, whisk everything together. In a lot of other videos, traditionally they would add the eggs directly into the well of flour and mix on the work surface. I only use this method because I find it just gives you more control over the entire process when you start mixing. Now you can dump your flour onto the clean work surface, and with your hand, create a well in the center. Add in your extra virgin olive oil, as this will help give the dough a nice shine and smoothness. Then you're going to want to add a little bit of that egg mixture, and begin whisking constantly with a fork, and as you do, use the other hand to push in a little bit of flour at a time. The more you do this, the thicker the egg mix will become, and as it thickens, add a bit more egg to the mix and continue to repeat this process until you've dumped the entire egg mixture. Using this approach makes everything a lot easier to manage, especially in the earlier stages of forming the dough. Eventually you're going to get to the point where you can't gradually toss the flour into the center any longer. And at that point, you can start now merging everything together by continuously pulling it into the center. A bench scraper really comes in handy here. You can do this with your hands, but the scraper honestly makes this way easier and way cleaner. As you continue to do this, the sticky mess will start forming into little crumbles, and those crumbles start to come together the longer you work into it. It's a messy process at first, but gradually gets easier as you begin to knead. During the kneading process, dust with a little bit of flour as necessary if you find it's too sticky. Don't overdo it though, because too much flour will dry it out. On that point, the general rule of thumb for correction is as follows. If the dough is too wet, add a little bit more flour. If you find it's way too dry and tough, add a small splash of water. You're going to want to knead this for a minimum of 10 minutes so we can create those gluten chains that make the pasta dough. Once you're done, the final product should look like this. It should be soft and smooth, but not sticky to the touch, and when you press down on it, you can see it slowly starts to come back into shape. Once you're done, wrap it and remove the air and let it sit in the fridge for at least 30 minutes. Now for forming and rolling the pasta, you can absolutely do the entire thing by hand, but I like to use a manual pasta roller. It's inexpensive and a nice middle ground between rolling and cutting by hand and the hundreds of dollars you'll spend on a stand-up mixer and the attachments. Once the pasta is ready to go, you can place it onto the work surface and dust it with a bit of flour. We're going to first begin by gently shaping and pressing it with our hands before rolling it out with a rolling pin, just so we can get it thin enough to pass it through the machine's primary setting. Now, it'll become very obvious in a minute why this is a good idea, but if you're even slightly smarter than I am, what you could do to make this whole process a lot easier to manage in a small space is divide the ball into quarters and work with them separately as you need. But if you didn't do that, I'm going to show you how to get it done either way. Once it's rolled thin enough, make sure the machine roller is set to 0 and run the dough through its first pass. I like to do this a couple of times. Once that's done, shift the dial to the next setting for the following pass. Dust with a little bit of flour when doing this to make sure the pasta doesn't stick to anything. The thinner the pasta gets, the more important this step is going to become. But again, do it gradually. If you add too much, especially at this stage, the pasta will get dry and start to crack. You can see that when I'm rolling, I start to hold the pasta as it exits rather than leading it in. The reason why is because of what I just mentioned earlier. As the pasta gets thinner, if you let it accumulate too much, it will start to stick together and be very difficult to manage. That's basically the entire process that you repeat as you increase the dial settings to your desired thickness. I like to roll it out to where it's as thin as I can get it without making it so thin that you can hold it up to the light and it shines through. On this machine, that's usually between settings 6 through 8. You can see me here dividing the sheet into sections because the single sheet has become way too long for me to manage in this space. Another important note, pasta dough is very sensitive to temperature and humidity change. If it starts to get hot and humid, be mindful of this. Don't forget to dust and rub with flour the thinner the pasta gets, or else it'll stick to the point where you might need to restart the entire stage. A step I had to learn the hard way so that you don't have to. Now, for the last step, add your attachment and cut the sheets into the length that you want your final pasta to be, and just pass it through the respective setting. And just like that, you've made pasta from scratch. Now repeat for as many portions as you want to make. Now, when cooking the pasta, we're going to add it to boiling water that we've seasoned with kosher salt. But very important to remember, fresh pasta, unlike store-bought dry pasta, only needs to cook for about 60 to 90 seconds. When I'm serving my pasta, I like to add a splash of extra virgin olive oil because I like the way it tastes, and also because it helps keep the cooked pasta from sticking together. You've probably noticed it's a running theme in this recipe. Now, all that's left to do is to plate it up. I'm going to be serving the pasta with some bolognese sauce that I made from scratch, which, if you want to learn how to make, you can check out my video for that recipe, and I'm going to leave the link in the description below. Alright guys, that about wraps it up. I hope that this encourages you to go out and try to make pasta from scratch on your own, and hope it encourages you to experiment and try different ratios with ingredients. As always, if you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up, and if you want to see more content like this, consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. And anything you'd like to see me cook or any recipes you want to see me try, leave it in the comment section below. Until then, I'll see you guys next time.